We drop in hot on this one as a guy frantically runs for his life through the snow, trying to outrun an arrow coming his way. Starting off with a stupid move I see. To no one's surprise, the arrow proved to be faster as it struck the guy's leg clean, penetrating through, completely causing him to stumble onto the ground face first in the snow as his blood stains the white snow around him. Laying there motionless, he started contemplating the meaning of life. What does it mean to live? Is it just to die in the end? As he slowly rose up to his knees, a hooded old man stood towering in front of him with his sharp blade to his throat. To him, it seemed like no matter what you do, there was no meaning to it in the end. Screaming, the old man asked his lackeys to search him, and the other two hooded figures stripped him down until they found what they were looking for. Held tightly, in one of the men's hands was a golden chalice, while our boy was held down on the ground by another. As the old man came close to him with his sword raised for a swing, he was telling himself that he had done everything he could. But in the end, he was killed just like in a game. His head lay severed on the ground, while in the background a slow chant is heard of someone repeating the same word, murder. Listening to this, our boy's severed head starts talking, telling the mother of corruption to be calm, because it was necessary to die here. The mummified hand in the snow slowly crawled towards him and grabbed the boy's body, raising it up in the air while his head lay far away, asking if she was angry because of the divinity within the relic he lost. Because if that was the case, he had already collected it. Reattaching his head to his body, he calmly explained that he was cutting all the trails by letting them kill him so no one comes looking for him anymore. But he did end up losing some money though. Back in the normie world, our boy was in his late 20s when he got too busy and lost interest in playing games every day. So the escape he chose was to play around with editors within games, which gives you infinite abilities. He doesn't even remember the name of the game or why he bought it, but he kept playing the same editor setup just to keep playing as the priest of corruption. But what was this priest of corruption anyway? It is just the hardest to play, hardest to progress, worst performing class in the game. But still, every time he played it, his heart started racing and his body got all hot and steamy. And around the time when all of his class progression materials were gone and he had completed all his class quests, he became the priest of corruption and fell into the game. That's where he is right now. And the thing that keeps screaming like a death metal singer is the goddess that he serves, the mother of corruption. The first time he woke up in the game, he only had two things on him: the robe of corruption and the mother's corruption hand that was lying on his chest. Due to the large presence that he could feel connected to the hand, he was able to easily accept that he had fallen into this game pretty early on. According to the game's description, the priest of corruption was a genetically enhanced human modified by drugs. And as a result, he had enhanced physical capabilities, heightened senses, and a body that could only be killed by divinity. And maybe there was something wrong with his brain, but while he had never been able to stand blood, now even watching gruesome scenes of animals getting eaten alive had no effect on him. But it was not all good. With not being able to feel emotions, his body was now not able to feel, or worse, taste things, and he really missed the taste of a nice bowl of pork belly and kimchi soup. Fast forward to the Hunters Guild, our boy was getting his license to accept jobs. Standing at the reception, he asked the receptionist if there were any jobs he could take on. Leaning in on the pile of requests, the receptionist looked over them, trying to find a job for the priest serving the goddess of preservation standing before her. You could just imagine how difficult it would be to move around if he said he was the priest of corruption roaming the streets, corrupting people. So he decided to pretend to be the priest of preservation. Sounds like a good guy, especially when paired up with that innocent smile he pulls out. Generally, someone pretending to be from a different order would not sit right with their parent god and would cause their god to mark them, a mark that only members of that order can see, more like a seal of punishment. However, our mother was benevolent in regards to impersonations like this. The order of corruption was the enemy of all, and our boy, who was hated by all, was the mother of corruption's only disciple. The receptionist, after looking through the requests, held one up in her hand for our boy, addressing him as Priest Marnak. He grabbed a request and started reading. It was an announcement from the Lord of Goos investigating recent monster attacks. The receptionist expressed her relief in working with him because with the others she had to read out the request for them. But for our boy, the moment he landed in this world, he was able to read and write every language here. Putting the request on the table, he asked the receptionist if there was a way to get part of the reward beforehand, because our boy was dead broke. The scene shifts to giant carriages being escorted through the snowy mountains, and the one escorting them was our boy. As he walked, he was telepathically talking to the goddess of corruption about how chatty the reception girl was. She agreed to give him part of the reward beforehand on the promise that he would pay the cancellation fee if he was late for the job the next day. Hearing him talk about this girl, the goddess whispered something to him, but only one word came out of her mouth, murder. But our boy seemed to understand exactly what she meant. Slightly irritated by what the goddess, he insisted that he did not have a crush on the reception girl, asking the goddess to stop teasing him, cutting the secret conversation short. Someone called our boy from behind, addressing him as Cleric Marnak. Turning around, Marnak was greeted by a chubby blonde guy with a happy-go-lucky face. Hope he doesn't die later on in the story. Looking at our boy's attire, the blonde guy asked if he was not from here, insisting that he tell him stories about where he was from. Marnak kept observing the blonde as he just kept talking. His name was Fear. Fear continued talking about his family and his life story, occasionally mixing in some local myths to spice up the conversation he was having, or more like a monologue because this guy was not shutting up. Just as our boy was about to fall down, tired of the conversation, a strong voice called out to Fear from the front, and he rushed forward, promising to return soon. The moment Marnak was alone, the whispers of the goddess continued, but this time it was something more serious. With slight concern on his face, Marnak told the goddess to stop telling him to kill everyone in front of, because that would be a very hard cover-up to do afterward. But the goddess kept insisting. Marnak explained that right now, that 29 silver reward was more important than all the goddess's grand plans combined, because that would get him a warm bed in this winter, and that was not too much to ask. Somehow, finally, the goddess calmed down and crawled back to his pocket. Sighing with Marnak apologized to the goddess for being too harsh, and started walking forward to catch up with the rest. As he walked, he glanced towards the goddesses, asking how many fingers she would rate everyone around him. Death fingers appeared in front of everyone around Marnak, which was only visible to him, and it looked like none of them there were particularly noteworthy. If he were to kill these men and send them to the Mother of Decay, he'd receive different amounts of holy based on the number of fingers she gave them. And if he could collect 10,000 holy, that could be exchanged for a new ability. This was the method he used to absorb all the holy from the sacred relic and awaken a new ability. Now there are 12 sacred relics left, and if he can collect all the relics, the Mother of Decay has promised to grant our boy any wish he desires. Licking his lips, Marnak thought about his wishes. The first thing would definitely be asking for his sense of taste back. His little fantasy was cut short by Fear. He came back defeated, telling Marnak how he was scolded by the captain for talking our boy to death, informing him to keep quiet for the rest of the journey. And our boy just smiled, saying it was all right. Suddenly, a strange feeling jolted Marnak up. The next second, arrows flew from the forest nearby, killing multiple guards stationed outside the wagon. Witnessing the sudden attack, Fear was stunned, still unable to move. Suddenly, a hand grabbed Fear from the collar and threw him behind. It was Marnak, and he saved Fear in the nick of time. And the arrows aimed at him pierced straight through Marnak's chest and stomach, bringing him down. As Fear called out to his new friend, the ambush was revealed to be done by the hooded men hiding in the bushes nearby. And now that everyone was dealt with, they started to come out of the woodwork. Laying down motionless on the snow was our boy as the mother whispered something in his ear. It was bandits. Marnak asked the goddess if she wanted him to pretend to be dead and absorb all the holy from these people, and she agreed. That would definitely be profitable. But there was something the mother was missing. Marnak crawled to his feet as he looked toward buried in the snow. Moving towards it, he lifted the sword and swung it in the direction of the bandits, ready to face them while the goddess repeatedly scolded him. Since the beginning, he never meant to surrender. This was his plan to begin with. He swung that sword and rushed straight for the first bandit he saw and chopped his head off in an instant. The rest of the group, hiding in nearby trees, saw this carnage happen and were stunned by how easily one of them was taken out of the picture. The bandit leader instructed others to finish everyone else off while he kept Marnak busy. The next second, the leader's sword clashed with our boy, sending shockwaves across the place. The leader seemed to be enjoying it while Marnak stood there blocking his strike nonchalantly. This was just boring. With one push, he sent the leader flying, creating distance between them. Calling out to the severed hand, Marnak asked for the guy's finger rating. He was clearly the best of the whole group, but giving him no time to assess, the leader rushed in, wanted to end this fight as soon as possible. The strikes were relentless, but each of them was parried with ease as Marnak waited for that rating to come through. Soon enough, the hand popped out of his coat with 2.5 fingers raised. The rating surprised him. A mere bandit had the same rating as the one who chopped his head off. A small smile crept on his face as he mumbled about the game being so unbalanced. He quickly steadied his pose, preparing for the next strike to come through. The bandit charged with full power and, with a loud clank, Marnak's blade broke in half as it swung away into the snow. The bandit was really happy about the situation while Marnak, on the other side, just sighed. This was the reason he always used frost steel for his weapons. The weapon difference was just too high. Coming forward, The bandit told Marnak to run away if he wanted to leave. Since this was their last job before they left, he suggested that they part ways while both of them were smiling. But hearing this, a slight smile came to Marnak's face. Our boy just couldn't let that two-finger rating slip through his hands. Putting his broken sword in the snow, Marnak provided another offer. He asked the leader to stop being a bandit and leave this place. If they did that, they could get off easy. Veins popped into Bandit's face hearing this absurd offer. Didn't this guy seriously expect me to agree to that? He asked, but there was a slight misunderstanding. As Marnak began to correct the leader's words, an arrow came from the side, piercing Marnak's head clean, and the leader blamed his team for being late. The archer of the team told the leader to stop messing with him. They saw him cut the boy's sword in two. He could have won the fight easily anyway. They continued their team conversation, praising the leader for his skills and reporting about the mission situation. All the while, our boy lay in the snow, face down and dead. The next moment, a creepy voice rang out loud. Did you really kill everyone? Stunning the bandit crew completely. Seeing his team's surprised faces, the leader wondered what just happened and looked behind him. There they saw Marnak standing up while pulling the arrow out from his head. He asked them if this was the first time they saw someone not die after getting hit with an arrow to the head. This was just beyond absurd for the bandits, and the leader now was pissing buckets. Marnak held his hands, telling the bandits that he already gave them a chance, and they had made their decision by putting an arrow in his head. Green aura surged through Marnak's body, while dread crept into the bandit leader's face. With confusion and fear in the leader turned to his crew, asking them to fire everything they had on him. Arrows rained once again, piercing Marnak's body repeatedly while he stood there, not moving an inch. He closed his eyes and called for the mother of corruption, asking her to help her son who had fallen in great peril. He kept praying while not even flinching from the repeated attacks. The bandits could not figure out heads or tails of what this thing in front of them was, but the one thing they knew was that they couldn't win against this monster. Wasting no, the bandits started to retreat frantically in the opposite direction, hoping to put as much distance between them as possible. But they could only run for a few feet before hitting some kind of invisible wall, trapping them all in the dome. The line in which the living cannot pass is an authority that the priest of corruption must activate before they can unleash their power. It prevents the living enemies from getting away and conceals the divinity of corruption. This authority allowed him to trap his enemies like rats in a trap. Marnak thanked the goddess for this very useful and fun authority and charged up his attack. Meanwhile, on the dome walls, the bandits were scratching at the walls to find some way to get out of there. Maybe if they hit it hard enough with the sword, they could slice through it. But time was running out, and they didn't have much of it. The next moment, a massive, dark, corrupted mana flowed toward the sky while all they could do was watch in fear. From where Marnak, a massive four-armed beast of corruption, summoned in front of them, his hands glowing with dark mana. This giant creature was beyond what the bandits had ever seen. They could only describe it as a monster. The creature roared, shaking the dome, and closed in on the bandits while they banged at the wall to let them out. But this was useless as the creature drew close. The sheer desperation and fear in their eyes only allowed them to plead for their safety. They begged the priest standing before them to spare their promising to stop being bandits for life. But this was not about getting them to the right path to begin with. He is the priest of corruption. Marnak telepathically asked the creature to go ahead and finish them off, but leave their bodies intact. The dome echoed with the death cries of but it did not last for long. After a couple of minutes, the place went silent again, and Marnak stood in the middle surrounded by the dead bandits all around. Marnak asked if the goddess wanted to collect the divinity from, and she responded with a yes. But if he did so, the guild members who came here to investigate would surely think that something's up. As he walked around the place, something caught his attention. It was Pierre. With an arrow to his chest, he was in pretty bad condition. Seeing him, an idea popped into Marnak's mind. Since he was so nice to our boy, saving him would get himself a good trustee, and it would also benefit his reputation. But for that, he needed the mother's help. He called out to the goddess, asking her to stop Pierre's wound progression. We moved to another unknown location where a girl is seen holding the chalice that was taken from Marnak at the start. Inspecting the relic, she asked what happened to the individual who stole it. An unknown man stood behind her reporting on the situation. Based on the report he received, the thief was beheaded on the spot. Hearing this, the lady asked to see the body. But because there were no supplies to spare, the expedition crew had to return with only the relic. Intrigued by the lady's interest in the boy, the man addressed her as the priest, wanting to ask about the situation. But the girl just asked him to leave and told him to convey a declaration. From here on out, she will be going on a pilgrimage. The message caught him by surprise, and he asked why the priest took such a hasty decision, wondering if it was because of the prophecy. Yes, it was because of the prophecy, and besides that, there was also someone she wanted to meet. We move back to Marnak as he walks through the snow at night, carrying Pierre on his back. 10 years ago, all religious orders received a prophecy. The end will wear the husk of life and come to fall upon the world. Reaching the city gates, Marnak handed Pierre over to the guards, while a voice came from the side, telling him that he could return. It was the ginger girl. She told him that she had already gotten permission from the guards. Both of them moved into the city as they walked through the empty roads at night. The girl praised him for being stronger than he looked and diverting her attention to the bag in his hands. She asked him if the heads he was carrying with him were the source of all the problems. She extended her hands, offering to keep the heads safe on behalf of her guild, offering to take the hassle away from Marnak, and he agreed instantly. They continued their walk, making small talk, and the girl asked about the place he would be staying. It was not decided yet, and he was still looking for and hearing he was still on the hunt. The girl, with a mischievous smile, offered him to stay at her place. Hearing this, Marnak's face turned into a bright red tomato, but the goddess doesn't seem so pleased about what she heard. In the morning, Marnak lay with his hand on his chest, saying his mother should understand why he accepted Aaron's proposal, though he was lying. In a fairly nice house on a large bed, the mother of corruption continued urging him to kill. He insisted he had no ulterior motives toward the red-haired beauty. He had simply thought she was inviting him to spend the night in the guild's guest room. A knock came to the door. Aaron entered and greeted him. "Good morning, priest." She would have preferred to let him rest longer, but something required his attention. The guild building was massive and made of stone, even its doors towering in size. Marnak said not to worry as he approached the door and asked what had happened. Aaron replied that the Lord wished to see him. Beneath the blanket, the mother's hand repeated "kill," and even showed a middle finger. Marnak asked if Aaron knew why the Lord needed him. She hesitated, then explained that Captain Gallant, who had died during the mission, was the Lord's half-brother. The guild itself resembled a beautiful, its roof decorated with the guild's emblem. Its refined decor and elegant structure gave it a sophisticated air. A butler informed the Lord of Marnak's arrival. The Lord, holding a cup of tea, dismissed the butler, who obediently withdrew. Standing before Marnak was Jay's master, Trenfelion, a tall, broad, middle-aged man dressed in rich clothes, with black hair and an empty, sorrowful gaze. He asked if Marnak had witnessed his brother's final moments and offered him tea. Marnak smiled faintly, almost creepily. The moment the mother saw the Lord, she drew a cross on him. Marnak, his eyes gleaming with cunning, asked what it was like to live as such a being. The Lord's expression shifted to surprise and confusion, his eyes turning red. Marnak called him a demon. There was only one reason the mother would react that way. He was not truly alive. Only demons could take human form. A demon's true form could be like a massive black serpent radiating an eerie shadow. Though far stronger than most creatures, demons were bound by strict limitations. To exist in this world, they needed contracts with other beings, which drew them toward living creatures. The gods despised them for this, and so priests declared demons evil, sparking relentless hunts that led to countless casualties. Marnak remembered all this well. The demon follower class had been difficult and rarely chosen, though it had been his second class once. Silence settled heavily between them. At last, the demon spoke, saying that thanks to Gallant's sacrifice, he had the chance to meet someone interesting. Judging by how easily Marnak had seen through him, he could not be a mere priest to the goddess of support. Marnak calmly introduced himself as a priest of the mother of corruption. The demon was visibly surprised. He had thought such priests were long extinct and invited him to sit. With no one else in the room, the atmosphere grew strangely intimate. Marnak's expression turned pleased as the demon admitted he had no particular reason for summoning him, only that he wished to know how Gallant had died, promising a reward in return. Marnak readily agreed. Later, as he stepped outside, Marnak reflected on the irony. The younger brother had complained of having no work all winter, only to be given a task that bypassed procedure and unknowingly led to his own brother's death. Life, as the demon had said, was complicated. "Kill," the mother whispered again. Marnak counted his money and remarked that the Lord had not tried to tempt him. It had been a sincere desire to know his brother's fate. Still, the mother persisted. Marnak sighed, saying he was not greedy and that she was overdoing it. When she continued, he gently argued that, unlike many things, gold does not rot. Irritated, she repeated her command. Calmly, he asked her to listen. Taking her hand, he stroked it gently and spoke with unusual warmth. He asked if she knew what else never faded. When she urged him to kill once more, he blushed slightly and answered his love for her. His expression was so sincere, it resembled that of a devoted lover. The mother of corruption faltered. She tried to say kill, but her voice wavered, her hand trembling as it rested against his chest. Though she repeated the word, it came slower, uncertain. Marnak reassured her softly that she would always come first, so she had nothing to worry about. Just then, Aaron's voice interrupted, announcing that Priest Marnak had returned. The mother immediately resumed her insistence. Aaron asked if he would like to greet the priests of the Order of Enlightenment. Marnak inwardly groaned at the thought of such fanatics, but then something caught his attention. One of them was staring at him. Something fell off. The mother noticed it too and realized one of them carried a sacred relic. Enlightenment to the one of them declared. He introduced himself as Morvis, a tall, scarred man who described himself as a pendulum on the scales of retribution. He gestured to his companions, the giant Koru and a brown-haired girl named Patina. Each carried large, unusual weapons and all bowed in greeting. Marnak returned the gesture politely, introducing himself as a priest of the goddess of support. A worker nearby mentioned that the initiation priest would be staying as well, just like him. Marnak maintained a polite, practiced smile, though inwardly he felt relieved. With others around, there was no need to take risks now. There would be better chances later to obtain the relic. The only problem was that when absorbing a divine relic, the divinity of corruption would inevitably reveal itself. Marnak thought that trying to steal it would make him look less like a priest and more like a bandit of corruption. Morvis said they needed to meet the Lord and suggested they have a productive conversation another time. As they began to leave, Marnak wondered if he should follow them. Aaron mentioned that the guild usually provided shelter for priests for a small price. He asked why she had invited him to spend the night with her. She replied that it was only so he wouldn't misunderstand. It wasn't personal interest. He was staying because of his position as a priest. Marnak felt a little disappointed, but said everything was fine. Aaron then added that she did have one request. Marnak asked what it was. Leaning close, she whispered that if possible, he could place a blessing of preservation on the food so it wouldn't spoil quickly. Marnak quickly stepped back and asked why she couldn't just say it normally. Why whisper? The mother muttered. Kill. The girl laughed and admitted she didn't even know why she did it. The mother of corruption grew furious and repeated her command. Someone nearby remarked that the two of them seemed to be having fun. Marnak turned and asked why he hadn't gone with the others. It was Koru who explained that he had known many of the northern lords held prejudices against his tribesmen, so he stayed behind out of politeness. After seeing his companions off, he had returned to the guild. Aaron said she didn't think Lord Tren would care about such things. He might seem cold, but he did his job well and knew how to separate personal matters from work. He treated people fairly, so it was better not to speak badly of him. Koru nodded, saying he would remember that, and asked her to tell him more. He listened carefully as Aaron spoke with enthusiasm and a smile, while Marnak simply nodded along. After some time, Marnak wondered aloud why the priests of enlightenment needed to meet the Lord. Koru explained that they were following a prophecy received 10 years ago. According to Morvis, the end hidden beneath a living shell would come into this world, and it might be a demon. Marnak asked if they truly believed the Lord was a demon. Koru shook his head, saying they were simply checking everyone. At that very moment, two priests stood before the Lord holding a goblet. Koru explained that Morvis possessed the ability to detect demons. The stone on Morvis's belt suddenly began to glow brightly. It was a sacred relic. Both Morvis and Patina stiffened, their expressions turning hostile as they glared at the Lord. Without warning, he revealed his true nature. His body expanded into a monstrous form, smashing through walls as a violent explosion tore through the guild. Marnak and Korra tensed. The demon now resembled a massive crocodile, its back covered in large spikes. It let out a deafening roar. Marnak immediately understood what had happened. Morvis raised his massive lightning crackling from it as he cast a spell scales of retribution. With a shout of die, he brought it crashing down onto the demon's head. A surge of energy erupted, followed by a massive explosion that sent smoke billowing across nearby houses. Damn demon! Morvis roared as dust and debris filled the air. Marnak and Koru rushed outside. Koru pointed toward the chaos, explaining that this was Morvis's hammer of punishment. They were truly fighting a demon. He urged Marnak to help, but instead, Marnak ran in the opposite direction, telling Koru to go ahead and that he would catch up. A worker stopped him, asking what was happening. Ignoring the question, Marnak grabbed the girl and demanded to know where Pierre was being treated. She struggled to explain, so he told her to be clearer. Then, pushing off the ground, he leapt high into the air. When he landed, the force shattered stone beneath him, and he dashed forward at great speed, wind trailing behind him. Meanwhile, Aaron heard cries for help. In the distance, they saw the enormous demon with Morvis standing atop its head. The creature was so massive it could crush a warrior with a single bite. Buildings collapsed around it as people fled in panic, shouting for others to get out of the way. Aaron screamed, "Priest, there's a monster!" The demon rampaged through the city center, its muscular body tearing through the guild building entirely. "Forget it," Marnak said. "Where is Pierre?" She pointed, saying he was inside. Marnak rushed into the building. Furniture lay scattered across the floor. Pierre was inside, asleep and covered in bandages but alive. Aaron said he was lucky. Marnak smiled and said he'd save him once, so he wouldn't let him die now. He lifted Pierre onto one shoulder. Aaron looked surprised that he could carry him so easily. Marnak told her to hold on, as he couldn't carry her in his arms as well. She quickly climbed onto his back and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Okay," she said. Marnak pushed off the ground again and leapt high into the air. As they moved, Aaron looked around and said she knew a secret passage. Marnak asked where, and she pointed toward a small door in a nearby building. It led outside the city, but it was locked. Marnak landed, then used the power of the Mother of Corruption to smash the door open with a single blow. Aaron stared in shock at his strength as they rushed inside. Looking back at the broken door, she asked, "Are you serious?" Then, almost in disbelief, she added that Marnak was incredibly strong. Aaron climbed down to the floor, and Marnak told her that if the situation got worse, she should escape through the passage. She quickly asked what he would do, but he simply replied that he had to go back. As she called out to stop him, Marnak was already running. He rushed toward the guild building, intending to call out to Karoo, but stopped when he saw him lying on the ground, wounded and bleeding heavily. Marnak knelt beside him and urged him to wake up. Karoo slowly opened one eye and muttered, recognizing him as Priest Marnak. The wounds were too deep, far beyond saving. Karoo pressed his hand against his injury as Marnak realized that leaving him like this would only make things worse. Marnak asked where the others were. With effort, Karoo explained that Patina was already dead, her body lying near a bloodstained wall. When Marnak asked how to defeat such a demon, Karoo told him about another relic, a white sword. Orvis had already driven it into the demon's head, and if Marnak could reach it and pierce the brain, the demon would surely die. As he finished speaking, Karoo's hand fell limp. Marnak remained beside him for a moment before quietly telling the Mother of Corruption to accept the man. Green magic began to envelop Karoo, and a system window appeared, 100 divinity gained. In the distance, Orvis roared as he raised his hammer and brought it down on the demon's head, shouting about the scales of retribution. The demon howled in pain, its massive tail smashing through nearby houses. Seeing his chance, Marnak ran forward and leapt from a rooftop onto the monster's lower body. He drove his sword into its flesh, blood spraying outward. Now, he only needed to reach the sword in its head. At the same time, Orvis was already moving toward it, gripping the weapon, but something was wrong. The demon began to stir. Marnak cursed under his breath as the creature pushed itself upright, rising onto its hind legs with a furious roar. He instantly realized the danger, but it was too late. The demon's tail lashed out, striking him and sending him flying across the battlefield. He crashed into the ground, the impact cracking the earth beneath him. Dust and smoke filled the air. Blood pooled around him as the Mother of Corruption whispered again and kill. Kill. Marnak forced out that he was fine, even as she continued. Lying on his back, arms spread out and blood covering his body, he gave a faint smile. After all, his mother always said that after a dark phase comes a bright one. Beside him lay a brooch that had fallen from Orvis's belt. Marnak picked it up, murmuring that this was an interesting turn of events. As the mother urged him to kill, he pressed the relic to his chest and declared that he was offering this sacred relic to her. His eyes glowed bright green as he asked for new strength and called for the seal to be removed. A thick green aura erupted from the relic, wrapping around him as its energy surged. He realized then that each relic held enough divinity to unlock a new power. With a sharp crack, the brooch shattered, its crystal breaking into pieces. A system message appeared. 11,723 divinity acquired. Marnak noted calmly that another seal had been broken and asked his mother to explain his new ability. She simply replied, "Kill." The green aura slowly faded. Suddenly, her hand leapt away from his chest, moving a short distance before continuing to repeat the same command. Marnak observed, almost amused, that she could now support him from a distance, though he wondered if that was truly enough for a relic. She shouted, "Kill!" even louder, and he quickly laughed it off, saying he was only joking and wouldn't anger her like that again, not in their current situation. Rising into the air once more, Marnak began another spell, surrounded by a bright green glow. He offered 10,000 divinity to to the mother of corruption, asking for even greater power. A brilliant white sphere formed at his chest, growing larger and brighter until it illuminated everything around him. As the light faded, understanding filled his mind. He could see it, the text of damage, a swirling magic circle filled with shifting symbols and words. The effect was simple but powerful. When activated, dark green metaphysical tattoos spread across his body, enhancing his physical abilities. Marnak remarked that it wasn't a bad power. He responded with kill. Still, he admitted that in his current situation, it would be useful. He noticed then that his broken legs had already healed. Standing up, he brushed the dust from his clothes. Looking ahead, he spotted someone nearby. It was Orvis, lying wounded and covered in blood. Marnak called out to him, then tensed as he realized what must have they had both been thrown from the monster at the same moment. Quietly, he told Orvis to rest in peace before once again offering the body to the mother of corruption. Green magic enveloped it. In the distance, the demon continued to rampage, roaring as it tore through buildings. Marnak frowned, noting how strange it was. The mother repeated her command, but he pointed out that even after killing the members of the Order of Enlightenment, the demon still seemed enraged. A system notification appeared, 1,000 divinity gained. He reflected that such a creature should have been capable of controlling itself rather than relying on pure instinct. The mother answered only with kill. Then Marnak paused, remembering something. Turning toward her, he warned that this might shake things a little as the tattoos along his neck and face began to glow. His eyes shone with a vivid green light. The mother of corruption seemed genuinely surprised by what he was about to do. Marnak sprinted across the moving with incredible speed as the demon below continued to roar and destroy everything in its path. Without hesitation, he ran straight toward it, then leapt down, the impact cracking the ground beneath him. The monster noticed him almost instantly, but in just 2 bounds, Marnak was already near its neck. The demon swung its massive tail, trying to crush him, but only managed to destroy more buildings. Marnak kept running, tense, focused, and unwavering until he reached the creature's head, where he spotted the sword. It was the same white blade Koru had mentioned. Just then, something fell off. The monster's body began to move strangely, arching unnaturally. Marnak realized what was about to happen. The demon was going to roll. As it reared up onto its hind legs with a deafening scream, he suddenly smiled and jumped off its back. This was exactly what he had been waiting for. He landed beneath the monster and immediately started running. A second later, he stopped, noticing the same pattern in its movements. It's doing it again, he thought. And as the demon began to fall onto its back, he dashed away. The same trick wouldn't work on him twice. The impact was like an explosion. Dust, stones, and fragments of houses were blasted into the air, and the shock wave shattered nearby windows. Marnak coughed violently, blood spilling from his mouth as clots gathered in his hand. Gritting his teeth, he muttered that it was progressing faster than he expected. As the demon returned to its feet, Marnak realized the cost of using the text of his body was slowly rotting from the inside. Sooner or later, the damage would overwhelm him, and he wouldn't be able to move at all. He didn't have much time. Launching himself high into the leaving a faint green trail behind, Marnak rushed forward. In a single leap, he landed on the monster's head and grabbed the sword. Corvus' words echoed in his mind. Pierce the brain, and the demon must die. A strong blue light began to radiate from the blade. Marnak grinned and yanked it free, saying almost wake up. As he pulled the sword from the demon's head, brilliant blue magic burst outward. Wake up, Lord Trade-In, he called. The monster's eyes turned blue, and within them, the silhouette of a man appeared. The demonic shell began to crack and breaking apart into fragments as a blinding white light engulfed everything. Across the city, people stopped and stared, Aaron among them, as the light illuminated even the hidden passage. When the light faded, the massive creature was gone. In its place lay Lord Trade-In, his body broken, missing both arms and legs. Marnak looked down at him and asked quietly if he was awake now. Trade-In chuckled, replying that meeting him like this was a blessing he could never have hoped for. Marnak brushed it off, saying he was then gestured toward the relic and remarked that the sword must have been suppressing his sanity. Extending a hand, he added with a faint smile that it seemed those 2 gold coins had not been wasted. Trade-In took his hand and pulled himself upright, smiling as he agreed they had more than paid for themselves. Together, they stood amidst the ruins of the guild. Elsewhere, a blue-haired girl conjured fire in her palm and released it onto the snow-covered ground. The flames spread, melting the snow and leaving bare earth where grass soon began to grow. A gray-haired ranger watched in amazement, admitting that this power impressed him every time. Even the trees caught the spreading fire, yet there was nobody to be found. He noted that this was the exact place where he had cut off Mark's head, but too much time had passed. Animals or monsters could have taken everything. The priest disagreed and thanked him for guiding her there, then asked if he could name all the nearby cities. Back in the city, now reduced to ruins, Marnak walked with an escort. They arrived at a building and a man opened the door for him. Inside, Lord Tradan greeted him warmly, arms open as if for an embrace, saying he had been waiting. Marnak smiled in return as Tradan remarked that he seemed to look better every time they met. Thanking him for the compliment, Marnak listened as Tradan admitted it was hard to express his gratitude, even calling him a priest, a demon slayer. Marnak raised an eyebrow and asked who exactly he had slain since the demon was still alive and doing quite well. Tradan, now fitted with prosthetic arms and legs, replied calmly that everyone wants to live even and that he didn't believe any living being was destined simply to die. Later, once everything had settled, Tradan addressed the entire city. Standing before a massive crowd, he declared that it was Marnak who had defeated the great demon and saved him. Marnak thought the praise didn't suit him, but it was too he had already been given the grand title of Demon Slayer. Aaron, in particular, seemed to enjoy it, constantly calling him that in public and drawing attention to him. The crowd buzzed with curiosity. Some whispered that he didn't look strong, while others insisted he had defeated 7 bandits alone. Someone else claimed that if he could kill a demon, bandits were nothing to him. Embarrassed, Marnak quietly slipped away from the crowd. Nearby, a man admitted he still found it hard to believe and feared that such a monster might appear in the city again. Later, seated at a table with Tradan and sharing wine, Marnak observed how smoothly his wooden prosthetics moved. Tradan explained that he only used them like this in private. In public, he pretended to limp, as moving freely came at a high cost. Marnak tensed and asked what he meant. Tradan answered calmly that over time, the hair on his body would weaken and fall out like autumn leaves. If they met again in a few months, Marnak would likely see him completely bald. Marnak silently regretted ever imagining such a sight. With a small sigh, Tradan waved it off and said they should change the subject. Then, looking at him more seriously, he asked if Marnak happened to have a week of free time. Marnak said he had time, and Tradan immediately brightened, exclaiming that it was perfect. He explained that he had received a request for a job, one that specifically concerned Marnak. When Marnak asked why him, Tradan replied that word of the Demon Slayer had likely spread, and whoever sent the request must have decided he was the best fit. As he understood it, the task involved sacred relics from an ancient empire. That caught Marnak's interest at once. Tradan added that the reward would be 5 gold coins paid in advance, and that if Marnak provided meaningful help in the investigation, he would even be allowed to keep 1 relic. At the mention of relics, countless possibilities swirled through Marnak's mind, and the mother of corruption eagerly whispered, "Kill." As she always implied, it was better to accept first and see things in person. Marnak agreed to take the job, while the mother repeated her approval in her usual way. Long ago, there had been an empire known as the Ancient One. Its rise had ended the era of maddened magicians and brought unity to the continent. Now, people sought to recreate its lost technologies, making sacred relics incredibly valuable as they contained powerful abilities. In truth, most high-level items in the world were relics originating from that empire. Marnak soon met his employers, introducing himself politely as a priest under the auspices of the goddess of he gave his name. A young man with black hair greeted him in return, saying it was a pleasure to meet him and introducing himself as Carmen Volas. The name caught Marnak's attention. Carmen noticed and calmly explained that he was indeed related to Anthony Volas of the Black Wolves, his father, but clarified that he was born out of wedlock. Marnak found that surprising. A man known for his principles, who was said to have lived alone after his wife's death, had a child on the side. Still, Marnak decided it was best not to pry into such matters and instead asked to be introduced to the rest of the team. Carmen obliged, gesturing toward a robed figure with her hood up. He explained that she was Tunisia, the magician who would lead them to the relic. Beneath the robe was a small, delicate girl with short black hair. The second member, Sukuz, belonged to the One-Horn tribe. Carmen assured Marnak that he was reliable. Sukuz greeted him, saying it was an honor to meet the Demon Slayer and offering a handshake. Embarrassed, Marnak asked him to just call him Marnak. But Sukuz laughed and said there was no reason to be shy about such achievements. With introductions complete, Carmen suggested they set out immediately, explaining that the journey would take about 2 days and that they could continue their conversation along the way. 2 days later, they were deep in the mountains, surrounded by a snowy forest under a beautiful night sky. They lit a fire and settled down to rest. As the flames crackled, Carmen noticed that Marnak wasn't sleeping and suggested he should take the chance to rest. Marnak replied that he had already slept and didn't feel tired. Carmen smiled, remarking that he seemed stronger than he looked, and with time still left before sunrise, he asked Marnak to share an interesting story. Surely someone like him had met many women on his travels. Marnak replied dryly that in that regard, he was like fresh snow covering a winter field, untouched. Carmen laughed, surprised, and asked what kind of traits he found attractive in women. Marnak paused, thinking of the mother of corruption, before answering that the most important thing was for her to be on his side. The mother, for once, remained silent. Carmen nodded in agreement, saying there was nothing better than waking up in the morning with someone peacefully sleeping beside you. Then, with growing enthusiasm, he added that a girl should have a big heart. The mother perked up at that, giving an approving gesture and kill. Kill. Carmen, oblivious, spread his arms and clarified that to hold such kindness, her chest would naturally have to be large as well. The mother tilted, confused, repeating, kill. Carmen turned to Marnak and openly admitted that he liked women with large chests. Marnak, unfazed, commented that it was good for him to know his it would surely help him in life, but advised that it might be best not to share such opinions directly with women. Carmen laughed and said he didn't usually talk about things like this, but with Marnak, it felt like speaking to an old friend. Marnak admitted he felt the same, even as the mother continued her relentless commentary in the background. The two of them spent the night talking and laughing, while the mother occasionally shouted, loudly enough to ruin the mood. By morning, Marnak reflected that while his mother always told him to choose his companions carefully, he didn't mind Carmen's company. At that moment, Tunisia announced that they had arrived. She removed her hood and explained that she would now open the passage to the ruins. Taking out a key, she began her work. Once a magnificent city and castle had stood here, and even the sky itself had been said to be beautiful. To enter, one needed to find the key, reach the correct coordinates, and read the ancient words inscribed upon it. As Tunisia recited the ancient language, a distortion formed in the air, slowly opening into what looked like a portal. She inserted the key and turned it clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on the mechanism. Only magicians could read the ancient text, making their role in such expeditions indispensable. Marnak, however, could also read the language, but that was a secret he had no intention of revealing. A massive, glowing blue portal fully formed before them. Carmen gestured toward it and told everyone to step through. With little hesitation, the group entered. In an instant, they found themselves somewhere entirely different. A lush forest surrounded them, filled with vibrant green trees, as if they had stepped into another world. In front of them stood a tall old tower with a huge entrance. Also before them was a dilapidated wall, overgrown with moss. They exclaimed with delight. Carmen said that compared to other ruins he had seen, this one was the best preserved. He added that they would start their research here. There would probably be a lot of artifacts. Marnak was also in a good mood. He had never thought that he would get the chance to enter ruins he had only seen in pictures on the internet. His heart trembled with delight. Tanida looked at him in disbelief as they went inside. They entered the stone building and lit a torch. Everything inside was very ancient. The team walked forward and approached a huge gate. Even the threshold beneath, it was massive. On the gate was a seal written in an ancient language that glowed blue. Marnak found that it stated they needed to prove that the blood of the imperial family flowed through their veins. Marnak understood the ancient text and looked at Tanida. She said they did not have the imperial blood of the ancient empire. The inscriptions glowed red, but the gate still opened. Tanida said they needed to prepare for battle. Many strange monsters wearing ancient masks rushed toward them, seeming to appear out of thin air. As they ran, the stone floor collapsed beneath them. Sukash prepared for battle. Although the monsters were small, they jumped off the walls and were everywhere. Sukash fought them off, cutting them down piece by piece. Tanida cast a spell, and her crystal cane began to glow with magic. The floor began to collapse, and light appeared beneath it. The monsters did not understand what was happening. The stone floor beneath them exploded, scattering them in different directions. They screamed and coughed as stones flew all over the room. Marnak drew his sword and joined the fight, cutting down many monsters with ease. He walked through their ranks, leaving only corpses behind. A voice, the mother of corruption, whispered, "Kill." He turned just as one of the monsters attacked him with a sword. Their blades clashed. Marnak realized another enemy was nearby and prepared to strike, but an arrow flew into the monster's head, breaking its mask. It fell to the ground bleeding. Marnak smiled. Croman was the one who had shot the arrow. He gave Marnak a thumbs up, and Marnak thanked him. Sukkis asked Tanida why she threw enemies between their lines. Marnak could have been hurt. Tanida replied that it was the fastest way to get rid of enemies. They killed them all anyway, and it would be easier if he stopped complaining. Succus asked what she said and was about to argue further, but Carmen told him to stop. Angry, Succus bared his teeth and sat down heavily on the ground in a lotus position. Carmen remarked that priest Marnak truly lived up to the nickname Demon Slayer. Marnak replied that the priest was ashamed to show such behavior. Carmen said he thought Marnak did everything right, and Marnak complimented Carmen's skill. Carmen explained that he had been practicing since childhood, devoting all his free time to it. He remembered being just a child already training. Marnak then asked when they would move forward. Tanida said she could continue now. She still had plenty of mana left. Succus complained that while she might not need rest due to spell chanting, the rest of them did. Tony then replied that it seemed the others didn't mind, and if only he needed rest, it would be better to reach the end of the ruins quickly rather than waste time. Succus felt that Tony that was just picking on him and angrily asked what she said. Carmen stepped in again, saying they would rest briefly and then move on. The discussion was over. Tony that was unhappy and the team members stood apart from one another. Marnak laughed quietly. In this world, those called magicians were usually stubborn and often fools. It was too easy to become a magician by birth. Those born with mana awakened at a certain age and knowledge of the ancient language filled their minds without effort. They could understand spells without learning them. Because of this, most magicians hated learning new things and became stubborn and self-centered. Tony that reminded Marnak of the magicians he had met before, though she was clearly better mannered than most. After a short rest, Carmen said it was time to move on. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed. A huge stone bolt fell to the ground with a roar raising dust and debris. Carmen shouted that the door had closed behind them. They turned at another sound. A metal monster emerged from a red, glowing portal and landed heavily on the floor. The creature had a single eye that glowed blue. Marnak was not surprised. The earlier enemies had been too weak for ruins of this level. This was something serious. The massive monster blocked the team's path, its glowing eye assessing them as it prepared to attack. Succus bared his teeth and readied his weapon. Tony that stepped forward telling him to move aside. She stood before the monster, her staff glowing blue. She began chanting in the ancient language, and her staff illuminated the entire chamber. The walls, ceiling, and floor began to collapse around her and the monster. Huge stones rose into the air, and cobblestones rained down. Tanida levitated above a forming pit as dust clouds filled the room. The monster's eye began to glow brighter and brighter. Carmen suddenly shouted in horror, warning Tanida that it was dangerous and she needed to finish the spell and retreat. The monster's eye reached its brightest point as it looked up at the descending magic. Tanitha's attack struck, but only created a small hole in the creature's head. The monster sank, then burst upward. Stones scattered as it collided with the remaining magic in an explosive impact, destroying everything around it. Tanida looked up in fear. A metal monster flew straight at her and swung its fist. It landed, and pieces of flesh and blood splashed everywhere. Succus was shocked and horrified by the scene. The remains of Tanida shattered right in front of him. The monster loomed above Succus, Tanitha's body dripping piece by piece onto his weapon. It seemed to grow bigger and more terrifying, surrounded by a blue aura. Marnak shouted for Succus to duck, but it was too late. The monster struck him in the face. The blow was like a flash and an explosion. In the next second, Succus's mutilated corpse was slammed against the stones, a pool of blood spreading beneath it. The monster cast his body aside and sent cobblestones scattering. Looks like nobody is safe in this manhwa. You never know who will die next. Now it turned its attention to Marnak and Carmen. Marnak asked Carmen if he wanted to live. Carmen, confused, said that he did. Without hesitation, Marnak's fist flew at him. He told him to grit his teeth. Carmen barely had time to react before the blow struck his chin and lost consciousness. Marnak caught him and held him in his arms. He muttered that Carmen was lucky to have a giant on his side. Addressing the mother of corruption, he said he was in a hurry and had no time for prayer. He asked her to send the monster immediately. A green portal opened in the air, and a huge white giant of corruption emerged, crashing down toward the metal monster. The metal creature stared up as the giant clasped its hands into a fist and brought it down with tremendous force onto its head. The impact rang out loudly, sending stones flying. The giant of corruption continued to smash the metal guardian into the floor, sparks and debris scattering everywhere. Marnak ran, carrying Carmen with him, and set him down against a wall away from the battle. He muttered that one could always rely on the white monster, and wondered if the mother of corruption thought the same. She simply said, "Kill." Green fire flickered as the mother of corruption absorbed power from Tanitha's staff. The system indicated that she had absorbed 1,000 divinity, along with another 100 from Succus. Marnak glanced back at the ongoing battle and cursed. It looked like the corruption giant would take a long time to win. The two monsters traded heavy, neither giving ground easily. The mother of corruption pulled out a small object and again said kill. Marnak agreed it was time to stop watching. His tattoos and eyes began to glow, his veins swelling as he called for strength. Then he ran toward the giants. The corruption giant noticed him as he approached. Marnak's true target was the metal giant's head, specifically the blue crystal embedded within it. It was the only part of the creature that differed from the rest. The corruption giant extended its arm, and Marnak used it to leaping onto its back. If he could destroy the crystal, something would surely happen. Marnak launched himself high into the air from the giant's head and closed in on the crystal. With a precise strike, he shattered it. Tiny fragments scattered in every direction. He landed satisfied. The crystal stopped glowing and the monster froze. Then the metal giant collapsed to the floor. The corruption giant roared in victory, its massive body trembling with triumph. Marnak thanked it for its help, but the mother of corruption pointed upward and said, kill. Marnak followed her gaze. New metal monsters were emerging from red-black portals across the ceiling. His expression darkened in surprise and frustration. A swarm of them dropped to the floor, shattering stone as they landed, and charged toward him and the giant. Marnak tensed. Even the corruption giant seemed uneasy. He asked how many there were. The mother of corruption simply repeated. At that moment, Carmen stirred and regained consciousness. He asked if Sukus and Tony were dead. Marnak confirmed it. There had been no chance to save them. Everything had happened too quickly. Carmen lowered his gaze and said the key should have activated when the metal giant fell from the ceiling. He admitted he hadn't known them well. They had only met when he hired them, but they had died because of his greed. Marnak told him they had accepted the job, knowing the risks, and asked him not to blame himself too quickly. Carmen then asked where they were. Marnak replied that they were in the room behind the black door. Shocked, Carmen realized what that meant and closed his eyes. He said it was better not to ask how he got there. Marnak had saved his life, and that was enough. He swore to repay him in the name of Volas. Marnak said he would look forward to it. Carmen added that Marnak didn't refuse gifts, did he? Marnak replied that it was in his nature. He accepted what was offered. Seeing that Carmen had recovered, Marnak said it was time to move. The metal giant was still out there, and it had escaped. Carmen agreed, and they continued along the dark corridor. Marnak reflected that he had not told the full truth. After they defeated the first metal giant, with the corruption giant's help, 3 more had fallen from the ceiling. Marnak had left the corruption giant behind to face them, knowing he himself couldn't handle them all. The giant of corruption had looked like an outcast, overwhelmed and battered. Betrayal of the century, as Marnak forced the door open. He had pushed Carmen through and told the giant to deal with the rest. He believed the creature would survive and hoped it would not hold a grudge. They pressed on. Looking ahead, Marnak said it seemed they had reached the end of the ruins. Before them stood a massive door, very similar to the one at the entrance. Marnak suggested going inside. The door began to open, revealing a blue light behind it. They entered the room and saw a metal bowl, above which a sword with a carved blade and a pendant were levitating. Behind them was a magic circle with a black iridescent center and a green halo. Carmen said that the story in the book had not been deceiving. In the bowl beneath the objects, clear water sparkled. Marnak did not understand what he meant. Carmen admitted he was in no position to ask, but he did anyway. He asked Marnak to give him the necklace with the pendant, promising to repay him. Marnak asked what was so special about it. Carmen explained that it was a genetic indicator. If you dripped blood onto it and thought about a specific bloodline, the necklace would use that as an offering and show the way to the person you were thinking of. Marnak realized what it was for. Carmen confirmed that he was trying to find his home he had never seen since birth. Marnak agreed, but asked if Carmen would give him the sword in return. After some time, they were once again in the mountains among the dark snowy forest and made a fire for the night. Carmen said that from now on, he would prefer to avoid pieces of metal larger than himself. Marnak agreed if they had delayed even a second longer, they would have been finished. After taking the relics, another metal giant had burst into the room. If they hadn't rushed, it would have caught them. Carmen put on the necklace. He admitted he had thought they might die there and asked Marnak to bless him. Marnak agreed. Carmen pricked his finger, and Marnak said that the goddess of support would help him. The mother of angrily muttered, "Kill." Carmen held his finger over the pendant, and a drop of blood fell onto it. Red magic began to emanate from the pendant like blood and fire, forming intricate patterns. Carmen watched in fascination and gasped. The pendant had revealed a path. He said he knew now that his mother was alive. The drop of blood spread into the shape of an arrow, like a compass. Marnak said he was glad the necklace had helped. Carmen replied that he couldn't have done it without Marnak and didn't know how to thank him. Marnak said he would gladly accept anything. Carmen hesitated, then asked if Marnak would consider one more request. Marnak agreed. Carmen asked to continue traveling together until he found his mother. Since Marnak was already heading west, they could go to the capital together where Carmen could properly repay him. With a confident smile, he added that he would cover all travel expenses. Marnak smiled faintly. Carmen assured him he had enough funds. Marnak studied him for a moment, feeling as though Carmen could see right through him, but he was more than willing to accept. The fire crackled between them as Carmen waited anxiously for an answer. When Marnak finally agreed, they shook hands. Marnak said that if Carmen truly needed his help, he would gladly support him on the journey. Carmen beamed with happiness and thanked him. By morning, they returned to the guild. Erin asked if Marnak was really leaving just like that after everything that had happened. She was shocked and clearly offended. She told him to give her his hand. Confused, he did as she asked. She placed something in it, a small leaf-shaped token. Marnak realized what it was. Erin explained that it was a silver mercenary badge. She repeated that she had made every effort to get it done quickly. The badge was beautiful and shone brightly, a circular emblem with wide rays extending from its sides. She asked if he had anything to say. When he didn't respond properly, she puffed out her cheeks and scolded him. He should have said they would see each other again, something like a promise to return. The mother of corruption kill. Marnak looked at Erin with a hint of sadness, thinking that he lived a life where such promises couldn't be kept. Erin snapped that if he didn't change his lifestyle, he would never find a girlfriend and would die alone. Then, flustered, she said herself, they would see each other again. Marnak asked what she meant. Erin leaned closer, covered his mouth with her, and told him he didn't need to understand. Blushing, Marnak nodded. She told him not to forget it, and added that the last thing she gave him was punishment. Later, in the white brick guild building in the new square, Marnak met Lord Tren again. He had changed a lot since their last meeting. Laughing loudly, he joked that everyone was born without hair anyway, his bald head gleaming in the sunlight. He claimed it was the true form of human nature. Tren said he had heard that Marnak was heading to the capital and had prepared something for him. He handed Marnak a letter of recommendation. He admitted he would have preferred to give money, but all funds had gone into restoring the city. He even showed an empty bag. The letter, however, would allow Marnak to seek help from his associates, though he warned they were difficult people and the letter should only be used if absolutely necessary. Marnak thanked him. Tren smiled and said it was simply a gesture of gratitude from a friend. He hoped Marnak would live an amazing life. After all, life was usually too short. Soon after, two sets of tracks stretched across the snowy landscape as Carmen and Marnak made their way toward the capital. Carmen remarked that they had been walking for several days, and the next town, Kelton, was still just as far away. The mother of corruption muttered, "Kill." She still didn't seem to like Carmen. Marnak ignored her. The only reason he had agreed to travel with Carmen was because of his potential 3.5 fingers of divinity. If absorbed, it could grant Marnak around 10,000 divinity, enough for significant new strength. Moreover, Carmen had the potential to grow even further. Although Marnak thought it was better to keep such a cheerful person alive, he suddenly became serious and thoughtful and took out the sword from the ruins. Carmen noticed and asked what was wrong. "Blood," Marnak replied. Confused, Carmen asked him to repeat, but instead, Marnak took a fighting stance, his eyes glowing bright green as he raised his sword and warned that something was coming toward them fast. Before Carmen could react, something rushed past him at great speed, kicking up a wall of snow. A giant black spider leapt into the air, then landed heavily, opening its grotesque jaws with a shriek. The sight was both disgusting and terrifying. Carmen quickly realized what it was and shouted that it was a snow spider, already reaching for his bow as he moved closer to the tree where the creature perched. The spider suddenly spat a strange substance toward him while he was aiming. Marnak reacted instantly, pulling Carmen out of harm's way, then launching himself forward. In a matter of seconds, he cut the spider apart with his sword. Blood sprayed everywhere as the creature split into pieces and scattered across the snow. However, more spiders began to appear, leaping down from the surrounding fir trees. As Marnak stood there, now drenched in blood, he muttered that whenever he used this sword, he should first think about where he would wash his hands afterward.